people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Can you give us a word on just how training camp has been going and just your feelings on facing Omar Figueroa Jr.?
I'm going to be 100% honest with you, Brian. I ain't with none of this shit they got going on. I feel like Al Haymon and Steven Espinoza is bullshitting because why is we doing a press conference on a computer when you got guys like, they don't do Floyd shit on no fucking computer when he fight a YouTuber. They don't do nobody else shit on the computer, but they want to do my shit on the computer. So that's telling me they don't give a fuck about me. So when you say fuck me, it's fuck y'all. And at the end of the day, that's what I really just came here to let y'all know. I see anybody can see it. Y'all at this point, y'all bullshitting. Y'all's been supposed to make this fight. Y'all giving us dates. Y'all keep pushing our dates back. Like, y'all, come on, man. Who the fuck do a 6-month camp? Y'all tripping. So what I'm gonna do, Brian, I'm gonna talk to you at 11 on Thursday. So what I'm gonna do is tell Omar, keep training your ass off. I'm training my ass off too. Let's go in there and put on a great performance. But I'm gonna get the fuck on up out of here and go back to sleep, y'all. Hey, Brian, I'll see you on Thursday, all right?
These sound bites from Adrian Broner leave us with a lot to reflect upon. They're obviously in reference to his upcoming fight with Omar Figueroa, set to go down next month on the 20th. Showtime card.
And really, it leaves you with a lot to think about.
For the longest time, there have been those out there who want the average boxing fan to believe that PBC Island, as I like to call it, is the land of milk and honey. But it's starting to seem like more and more the grass isn't always greener on the other side. That side in particular. You're seeing fighters that aren't as active as they should be. You're seeing Adrian Broner more and more.
Think about it. Jermel Charlo only boxed once this year. We're not going to see that guy again till the beginning of next year.
His brother Jermel, who campaigns north of the junior middleweight division and the middleweight division, he reportedly hurt his back, and who knows if that guy's going to see action at all. This year, he might and he might not.
We talk about that a lot here on the channel, how the PBC doesn't really keep their fighters active.
And I maintain my original position. It isn't that they don't have enough fight dates to accommodate all of these fighters that I find unethical. It's not allowing them to go elsewhere for opportunities that I find unethical. If they can make a little bit of money on the Matchroom side or the Top Rank side or the Golden Boy side of things, perhaps in a foreign country like Australia or the United Kingdom, then they should be allowed to do so if the PBC ain't got enough fight dates to accommodate them. But it seems like
there's a big question as to whether or not these fighters have the autonomy, the legal liberty to go elsewhere if they have a choice.
If somebody's got some money for them on some other side of the street. A fight date with a fighter, and a fight purse.
You heard what Adrian Broner said. He said this fight should have happened sooner rather than later.
6-month camp, a thing unheard of. The fight date being pushed back. This is the same Adrian Broner who not that long ago was supposed to have been in the running for a Conor Benn fight. Conor Benn, who's a Matchroom fighter, fights on DAZN. Conor Benn, whose name is now attached to Chris Eubank Jr. Put simply, I think Conor Benn versus Broner makes a lot more sense than venturing north, 2 divisions north of welterweight, where he campaigns up to middleweight to take on Chris Eubank Jr. Better still, Broner was in that conversation. Broner was in the running for a Conor Benn fight, and it didn't happen.
Whenever Broner has one of these outbursts, it creates more questions than it does answers.
Why didn't Adrian Broner take up Eddie Hearn on his offer to fight Conor Benn in the United Kingdom? And which fight would have gotten Adrian Broner more money? The fight with Conor Benn in the UK or the fight with Omar Figueroa he's about to have in the US? Because comparatively, Conor's got a buzz. Omar doesn't. Conor Benn is an unbeaten up-and-comer looking to make a name for himself, and he's already garnered some marquee value. More marquee value in the UK, I think, than Omar Figueroa has in the U.S.
Omar Figueroa hasn't been very active the last 3 years, and he's coming off of 2 consecutive losses.
Omar's only fought 2 times in the last 3 years. Once in 2019, he sat out all of 2020, returned to action last year, lost another fight, was the only fight that he had. You're telling me that Adrian Broner stands to make more money fighting this guy than fighting Conor Benn in the UK? I really don't think so.
I ain't with none of this shit they got going on. I feel like Al Haymon and Steven Espinoza is bullshitting because why is we doing a press conference on a computer? They don't do Floyd shit on no fucking computer when he fight a YouTuber. They don't do nobody else shit on the computer, but they want to do my shit on the computer. So that's telling me they don't give a fuck about me. So when you say fuck me, it's fuck y'all. And at the end of the day, that's what I really just came here to let y'all know. I see anybody can see it. Y'all's been supposed to make this fight. Y'all giving us dates. Y'all keep pushing our dates back. Like, y'all, come on, man. Who the fuck do a 6-month camp?
As stated, whenever Adrian Broner has one of these outbursts, and it happens periodically, it happens several times throughout the year, Adrian Broner takes shots at Al Haymon, gives the boxing community at large a look behind the curtain as to what's really going on at the PBC. Whenever he has one of these outbursts, it's revealing the insights.
Kind of lets the cat out the bag when he does this.
Sometimes it's confirmation, things that we already know, though there is another side to this, and it's that Adrian Broner's press conference for his upcoming fight with Omar Figueroa might have been relegated to a mere Zoom call because, well, it's not a big fight. And while in Adrian Broner's mind, he may be due a certain level of attention.
There is entitlement to consider.
So at the same time, a fighter who was just made a sizable offer for a potential Conor Benn fight across the pond, across the Atlantic Ocean, is going to have some entitlements because some other people out there think he's worth some scratch, worth some cash. And if you want to keep him on your side of things, you've got to treat him right.
As you can see, Adrian Broner's not happy with the way he's being treated.
Which brings me back to my previous question. Which fight would have made Adrian Broner more money? The Conor Benn fight at Matchroom or the fight he's about to have with Omar Figueroa? Because he doesn't seem happy, doesn't seem satisfied, doesn't seem taken care of.
Which fight would have made him more money? And whose idea was it for him to reject the Conor Benn fight? Was it his or someone else's?
Did he make that decision on his own, or was he made empty promises on the PBC and Showtime side of things to stay on that side because they had something big planned for him? And was this the big plan?
Fighting Omar Figueroa in America don't move the needle the way that fighting Conor Benn in the UK moves the needle to those boxing fans and that revenue stream.
Just seeing Adrian Broner in a different setting would have been a change of decorum, a breath of fresh air from what we're used to, because we're used to seeing all this stuff from Adrian Broner. You know, he goes in there with a guy, underwhelms a lot of people, but seeing him fight under the Matchroom banner, I think, would have been a welcome change, even if it was only a one-off situation, a one-off deal for a Conor Benn fight. It would have been something different. As it stands, he's fighting Omar.
Nobody really gives a shit because most people don't think that much of Omar these days.
I don't think much of Adrian Broner either, but somebody across the pond thought enough of Adrian that they likely made him a 7-figure offer to go to their side of things for a one-off situation, a one-off fight. I hardly think they offered Adrian anything under $1 million to get on a plane.
$1 million at least, maybe 2.
What is he going to make for fighting Omar Figueroa?
I mean, if it was his decision to reject that offer, then Adrian made his bed and he has to lie in it.
But if it wasn't his decision, if Adrian doesn't actually have the autonomy to make that kind of a decision, that might explain why he's so disgruntled with both Stephen Espinoza and Al Haymon.
The bottom line is we want to make the fight happen. Tank Davis, have your people call my people, or my people will call your people. It should be on Showtime and DAZN because they're the broadcasting partners for each individual. It's only fair. And we can stage it in Las Vegas. Easy as that. Let's go.
Easier said than done. The old adage almost immediately comes to mind because when you're talking about a joint pay-per-view, what both broadcasters are going to want is a situation to where both broadcasters, both distributors can make money. And in order for both broadcasters that are sharing one pay-per-view, in order for the both of them to make money, well, it's got to be one hell of a pay-per-view. Big one. Bigger than average. And while Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis has the potential, even here and now, even here today, has the potential to sell upwards of 1 million pay-per-view buys in a situation like that. Ideally, what you'd want is more than that.
Yeah.
Perhaps 2 million pay-per-view buys. And in order for it to reach that point, you've got to let it marinate a little more. You've got to let it build, unfortunately.
1 million pay-per-view buys might not be enough to get Stephan Espinoza and Showtime to jump on board and do it jointly.
Might not. Ryan Garcia took to his own social media and stated, "Today is bug the shit out of Gervonta Davis Day, July 19th, new holiday. He locked himself in the bunker once he saw the truth. I'm knocking you out. No mercy."
It's the same Ryan Garcia that said belts don't matter, belts don't mean shit. And if he were Devin Haney, he wouldn't be proud that he had to beat George for undisputed at lightweight.
Then why was Ryan Garcia calling George Kambosos out? You know, before Devin Haney beat him. It seems like Ryan Garcia's opinion on George Kambosos quite conveniently changed as soon as the belts themselves changed hands. It was Ryan Garcia who, late last year, promised that he would fight George Kambosos in his return fight, offered him a lot of respect for the performance that he put on against Teofimo Lopez, all that jazz, only so that as soon as Devin beats him, only as soon as Devin becomes this division's undisputed champion, oh, now all of a sudden,
belts don't mean shit, and fighting George and beating him ain't nothing to be proud of.
Ryan Garcia is smarter than he looks, and he knows what he's doing. He's dangling this carrot, this Gervonta Davis carrot, this Gervonta Davis fight in front of the fight fans, and some people, they're actually buying it. You know, they're hyping up that fight, and they're placing no emphasis on Ryan taking on yet another one of his contemporaries, Devin Haney, in a fight that's been right in front of him the whole time, but he just doesn't seem to want it.
And there are actually people out there making excuses for him.
I've heard it said in some circles, small ones, that Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis as a fight, while it may not be a title fight or an undisputed fight like Haney versus Kambosos, it's an important fight to the sport and important to the sport's health and well-being because of the revenue that it will generate. Well, it can't generate any revenue for the sport until it happens, and most people feel it's not about to happen. So what the hell are we really talking about here? In order for it to happen, both teams and both promoters, both networks, platforms, they have to come together. It doesn't look like we're on the eve of that. So until such a time as that takes place,
it's more of the same.
More filler fights, more substitutes, more empty promises, more hype for the sake of hype.
Oh, yeah, because we ain't got enough of that in the sport of boxing.
I'm just giving it to you straight. It's the only way I know how to give it to you. And the way I see it, it is true that this is a commercially viable fight. Perhaps one of the most commercially viable fights involving two homegrown American fighters, American boxers. It really is a fight that could be commercially successful, wildly commercially successful. It could be when it happens, but when is it going to happen?
Most people don't think it's going to happen this year. Hell, I've seen people that put the fight date at approximately 2 years from now.
And given that it took 5 years to finally get Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather Jr. over the line, that it's taken approximately 4.5 years to get Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. to the table to do their fight, which hasn't even been officially announced, by the way. Given that Wilder versus Joshua never actually took place, it didn't happen. All these things in mind, it could take a long while before Ryan Garcia actually fights Gervonta Davis and the sport of boxing gets to reap the benefit of that fight. The attention that it gets, the lifeblood in the form of revenue, and all that jazz. So, for the time being, all you guys are selling is a dream.
Because there's not enough of that in the sport of boxing.
Both Ryan Garcia and Gervonta Davis are going to ride this wave they've created and use it to circumvent all of their other contemporaries, like Shakur Stevenson, like Devin Haney. It's no coincidence that Floyd Mayweather Jr. took it upon himself to dash any aspirations of a Stevenson versus Davis fight.
Of course, Stevenson hasn't even moved up to lightweight yet.
So if and when he does, Floyd's already let you guys know what the score is. He's got no intentions of putting Davis in there with Shakur Stevenson, as if you needed me to tell you that. Or him. And finally, WBA has issued out an order for Gennady Golovkin to take on Erislandy Lara beyond the upcoming Canelo Alvarez trilogy. The World Boxing Association has approved Gennady Golovkin's request for a special permit to move up in weight for the upcoming trilogy fight with undisputed super middleweight champion Saul Canelo Alvarez, which is scheduled to take place September 17th at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Earlier this year, Golovkin traveled to Japan and stopped Ryota Murata to unify the WBA, IBF, and IBO middleweight titles. The WBA's regular champion at 160 pounds is Erislandy Lara.
This was actually a conversation some years ago. Erislandy Lara versus Gennady Golovkin.
Erislandy Lara, who hasn't been all that active the last 3 years, he's been averaging one fight a year for the last 3 years. Gennady, he's not much better.
He just snapped back from his stint of inactivity, which was a little over a year.
Should Golovkin defeat Canelo, he will only have 5 days until September 23rd to advise the WBA as to which world title he intends to keep. If he decides to return back to middleweight, he will have 120 days to defend his title against Lara to establish a single WBA champion at 160 pounds. And if Golovkin loses to Canelo, he will also have 120 days to defend his title against Lara to establish a single WBA champion at 160 pounds. It's not hard to see that whatever decision Gennady Golovkin decides to make beyond the Canelo-Alvarez fight directly relates to the Canelo-Alvarez fight. Most people think he's going to lose. I think he's going to get stopped. And if he does, moving back down to middleweight, it's possible, though hanging on to that WBA title.
Golovkin's vacated a title before. He vacated the IBF ahead of what was the second Canelo-Alvarez fight.
Given the schedule, he could end up vacating the WBA after a third Canelo-Alvarez fight, because
he goes in there, gets his ass kicked by Canelo Alvarez, he'll be in no condition to take on the likes of an Erislandy Lara.
They're both aging fighters, you understand, but one of them could be coming off a physically taxing fight and a loss.
That fight is Gennady Golovkin. Gennady, who very recently addressed Canelo's animosity.
He said maybe those are the side effects of having illegal substances in your body. Taking a jab at Canelo Alvarez's previous fiasco with the banned substance clenbuterol, not to be confused with a steroid, though still a banned substance. He said, I treat it like it's a sporting event, nothing personal, but the words that he chooses to say are unexplainable, inexplicable.
Canelo Alvarez has surmised his hostility towards Gennady Golovkin as being attributed to Gennady's double talk.
Canelo said that while the cameras are rolling, Gennady wants to play nice, but he throws just as many shots at Canelo as Canelo's throwing at him. The difference is Canelo's not trying to pass himself off as being Mr. Nice Guy. He's not a two-face the way that Gennady is. That's the gist of it.
In any event, you get the sense that Canelo Alvarez is looking to rebound off that loss to Dimitri and rebound in a big way.
One surefire way to make people forget in the sport of boxing is to give them a highlight reel knockout while you get yourself back in the winner's bracket against a fighter who's never been stopped. That fighter is Gennady Golovkin, who to date has only ever been defeated by Canelo Alvarez. A fitting end to what could be the third installment, the third chapter, the third act in this saga.
I'm telling you, depending on what happens in that fight, that guy's not going to be in no condition to take on Erislandy Lara, and he might so decide to drop that belt.
If and when he does, that will make Erislandy Lara this division's WBA champion, a two-division champion overall, and the second middleweight champion the PBC has in today's middleweight division.
And Gennady, if he doesn't retire, he can defend the IBF against Haymon.
I could see that happening.